All right. Hello, everyone. We are super excited to be with you today for another episode of Trauma Talks and Truths. I am Dr. Isela Garcia, and
I'm Nina Vasquez.
we are a little late today, but we're here. We're here. Yeah, sometimes we just have to kind of go with the flow of things. And what we're going to talk about today is part 2 of Where is my book? Where is my book? I thought I had it with me.
I got
do
it.
have it with me. Thank you. The 4 agreements. I don't know what I did with it. The 4 agreements, part 2. So, on not yesterday, it wasn't yesterday, right? It was the day before yesterday.
Monday.
Yeah, Monday, we went through and we talked about the first 2 parts of the 4 agreements, which is be impeccable with your word and don't take anything personally. And before we get into 3 and 4, I do have something. I don't know if that we were very clear about this. So I want to just kind of say something a little bit more about not taking something personally. I had opened the book. It's like funny when these things happen because I tell you, Spirit is talking to us all the time. So I opened the book and I wish I had it in front of me. I know I grabbed it. I don't know what I did with it. But what happened was, like sometimes I'll grab a book and I'll just open it. And then I look down and I go, oh, like I needed that message. Like seriously, all these pages, the one I opened, and it's what I needed to hear. So after we had done the session, I opened the book and it landed on the page that said something. It was very simple, but it said something like, if somebody tells you that you're fat, it's really about their own insecurities about their weight. And like we project out the very thing that are our own insecurities. And so I wanted to make sure, because I'm not sure that we actually articulated that in our first session, that's oftentimes what's happening is like when people make a judgment, it's really a judgment about themselves.
Right. That's a good one, right? I have a mentor or coach that always says, you see it, you got it.
Yeah. You see it, you got it. That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
So they totally had that, whatever they called out in you. Yeah.
And I think about this. I've actually called people out on stuff like that. So like in meetings when I would be sitting with folks and they were, somebody would come out and say, well, this and this and that and the other. And I'll go, oh, so tell me about when that happened to you. What?
Yes.
I wasn't ready for that. I was talking about you, not me.
Yeah.
But I think people need to hear that message. I sometimes think everybody knows this, but I don't think everybody knows this. That when somebody is projecting their own, like they're not blaming you if they're talking about you, they're giving their opinion about you, you have to just kind of consider that that's coming from the place within them.
Yeah.
Who feel insecure or not enough or all of the things that, they're spewing. It's like, oh, that's really going on with them. So don't let it land.
Yeah.
Don't let it land.
Let it roll. Let
Yep.
it.
All right. So the 4 agreements.
With 2 left.
2 more. Yes. Don Miguel Ruiz. The third one for the 4 agreements is don't make assumptions. Okay, so the definition is find the courage to ask questions and express what you really want. Communicate with others as clearly as you can to avoid misunderstandings, sadness, drama, all the things that come with assumptions. The first time I ever saw somebody write out the word assumptions or assume. Have you ever seen, when you write assume, and then you make an ass out of you and me?
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let me write this so people.
If you assume, yeah, please do. If you assume you make an ass out of you and me.
And I don't have blank sheet of paper right here, but here's my Post-it note.
Okay.
So when we assume, we make an ass out of you and me.
Mm.
First time I ever saw that, I was like, oh shit,
That's pretty
that's a
good.
big one. Right. And I really, really try to live by this. I have to be careful sometimes because Gia says sometimes I'm scary just because I am direct in a lot of ways. And my daughter's Gia, by the way, for those people who are watching. Sometimes she says I'm scary because I am direct and people don't know how to receive my direct nature. And sometimes what happens is I try not to assume that people know things. And so then I go into like teach mode. And then sometimes they're like, you don't need to teach me, and then I'm like, okay. So so for me, sometimes it's this place where I kind of have to really, number one, let spirit guide me to some
Mhm.
degree, because I I really work from a place of trying not to assume things, assume people know, or assume that, um, or have like an expectation or expect that people are responsible for things that maybe they didn't even know, right?
Yeah.
And so I really have spent a lot of time thinking about not how what that looks like for me in my life, like how not to make assumptions. Or when people say something to me, I go to the place of I'm going to assume positive intent.
Uh-huh.
I'm
Uh-huh.
going to assume positive intent instead of like, I can't believe she said that. Why would she say that to me? And she did this and this and this and that, because we can just spin ourselves out,
Yeah.
right? And so when somebody says something, I go to the place of like, okay, before I jump anywhere and create a story about this, I'm just going to assume that they had positive intent. What
Mm.
comes up for you, Nina?
Two places. One is coaching. So if you're as a coach, one of my biggest jobs is to not assume.
Mm,
And the mind, I notice just in my own work, is the mind kind of does it automatically.
right.
And then I have to filter out, like, what am I assuming here? And so you just get better at it. Because if I make an assumption, then I might miss something. Right. And so that's one. The other place is relationships.
Mm,
Right? How many times do we hear, definitely us women, we do this, like, they should just know. I'm assuming they just know what I want. I'm assuming they just know I want flowers for my birthday, or I don't like flowers, or like, it's just like a lot of, or if they don't text me, what are we assuming?
what's the
Right?
story we're telling
What's the
ourselves?
story we're telling ourselves? Right? Because it's
Yeah.
all a story. I love how you said, assume positive intent. I mean, you can't really go wrong there.
Mhm.
You could find out maybe it wasn't positive intent later, but you're going to feel much better if you assume positive intent, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
God,
But yeah, there's a lot of assumptions we do as human beings.
yeah, the one that you talked about, like assuming that people knew, especially in relationships, like with my husband, I would make the assumption that he would just, especially like holidays. I think I may have shared with you this story, but my husband's not really good at putting himself in somebody else's. He's neurodivergent, so he's not really good at putting himself in somebody else's shoes and wondering about what they want. So when he goes and shops for somebody, he thinks of what he likes, and then he gets, so like he likes like the polyester mix with cotton shirts, because he's an athlete, and so that, in terms of sweat, that he really likes that feeling, when he's working out and when he's playing basketball. And so when he travels, he'll come back with that exact mix shirt for my daughter. And she's like, I so what? Like, I don't understand this. And one Christmas, he got me a pair of Juicy Couture sweatpants.
Mhm.
And I'm not into labels. And
Mhm.
so I didn't even realize they were Juicy Couture, but they had juicy on the ass.
Oh.
And they were too small. And I was like, okay, so first off, they don't fit me. So I don't know if you think I'm actually this size. Maybe
Mhm.
that's a good thing. I don't
Yeah.
know. And I why would I wear a pair of sweats with juicy on the butt?
Yes.
And that was the last time he ever had the freedom to buy Christmas gifts for me, because
Um,
that's when we started making an Amazon list of gifts,
yeah,
because I'm no longer going to get in the place of assuming that you know what I want, because clearly you don't understand.
you don't.
Right.
Well, let's talk about like how your whole day can be affected if you're like as a woman or a man, for example. It doesn't
Right.
matter who. But if you're going throughout your day thinking they should know
They should
what I
know.
want, and I'm not going to tell them what I want, but they should know, and then they don't get the right thing, or it's your birthday, for example, and they're not doing anything right, and you're just so frustrated, but you're not willing to say, here's what I really want.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true in friendships. That's true at work. That's true with your kids. That's true in all relationships. We have to understand that people are making sense of their world through their own personal lens. And
Yeah.
we have to have the courage to have difficult conversations, or, like I mentioned before, assume positive intent.
Yeah.
So my daughter goes out and she does work with me, and I go out and work with schools and classrooms and teachers. And recently went into a classroom and we had to change things around, where the teachers who were in the room were not happy by the changes that we were making. And one of the teachers started pulling things off the wall, but she did it like this. Okay. Well,
Okay.
my kid is neurodivergent. And so for her, and she's so that for her, that means autism and ADHD. And so the other person, the other coach who was with me in our debrief afterwards, she interpreted it as the teacher was really angry.
Mm.
And my daughter looked at her and she goes, no, you just told her to take things off the wall and she was taking them off the wall. Like, her interpretation wasn't about all of the huffing and all of that the coach was telling a story about. My
Uh-huh.
daughter just said, yeah, you asked her to take the things off the wall and she did it. Like, there was no bad intention there. And so it was really fascinating to watch how she kind of just took it for what it was,
Facts only.
without attaching some sort of past experience with it, or even knowledge of the teacher. She was just like, she did what you asked her to do.
Yeah.
And I think that if we navigated through life like that a little bit more, we would have less misunderstandings.
Yeah. Like, how
Yeah.
many times do we have thoughts like, and maybe this is not assuming. Yeah, it might be actually. Like, if you have a partner and they don't wash the dishes or they don't pick up after themselves, then you might think they don't care about me. But you're assuming they don't care, but it has nothing to do with you. They just didn't think about it.
Yeah.
Right? It's just a lot of assumptions happening underneath the surface of our mind about things in life.
Yeah, I think that if I were going to suggest anything about this, it really would be to be curious,
Hmm.
to just be curious, to acknowledge when you're telling yourself a story about someone. And you know when this happens the most? Emails and texts.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
I,
Yes.
I have to share this story. I have another story. So
Okay.
I used to have like a group that worked for me because I had like a big, lots of $1 million contract. And one of the people who worked for me, she didn't like to get paid electronically. She wanted a written check. Well, my husband was my bookkeeper for this project. And so she texted him and she said, Kevin, where's my check? So my husband, by the time I got home, he had read the email and he was seething. Like, I could tell how angry he was just by looking at him. And my husband is somebody who's very laid back, easygoing. We've been together a very, very long time, and I can count on one hand how often or how much he's gotten like angry like that. Like, seriously, this man doesn't like blow up, or he doesn't like express anger in the way that a lot of people do. And so I get home and he's pissed. And I'm like, what happened? He's like, look at this. Look at this. And he shows me his phone. He's like, look at what she wrote. And I said, Kevin, where's my check? Where's her check? That's not what she means. I'm like, no, she literally just said, Kevin, where's my check? She's like, I said, what do you think? She's saying, where's my fucking check? Why didn't you get it to me? Why am I was like, okay, so are you late on the check? Because the way that you are interpreting it is not what's written here. You're putting an undercurrent to all of this, and I'm wondering if that's your own guilt. Like, are you blind? Like, what's happening here? And so often I have conversations with people who are like, well, they sent me this email and it sounded like this, and I can't believe it was all caps. And it was like, and I'm like, okay, so what's the story you're telling yourself about this?
Yeah.
And is it really how it's written?
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a really good one. That happens to all of us all the time. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like, oh, I jumped to conclusions there.
Yes. So we make an assumption that they have, and I think we have to get into the practice of just saying, oh, this is what they said. End of story.
That's it.
That's it.
Sometimes we don't know the come from, right? We don't really know. We can land on, I don't know, or we can land on where you said, positive intent.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if you want clarification, you can just simply say, can you tell me more about this?
Mm-hmm.
Can you share more about this?
Yeah.
Or tell me, can you share how you're feeling about this?
Yeah.
Instead of jumping to a place of wanting to defend yourself or to, attach yourself to the story and then get lost in it somewhere.
Yeah. And it can get really muddy, right? Because sometimes we defend ourselves and then sometimes we like tell them about their self too. Like it can get really muddy.
Yep. Don't make assumptions. And I actually say that to people. I'll say, especially when I'm working with a group of people, I'll say, I'm not going to make any assumptions about what you know and you don't know. So I'm going to start to share something. And if you're like, oh, yeah, I already know this, then just, you can cut me off and you can say, I'm good. We don't have to go down this path. We're ready to go to the next whatever that we're working on. But I just tell people, I'm not going to make any assumptions about what you know, what you've experienced, or how you make sense of things. This way we can get on the same playing field before we move on to the next thing, whatever that thing is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So the next one is always do your best. Always do your best. The definition is your best will change from moment to moment. Isn't that the truth?
True.
It will be different when you are healthy as opposed to sick. And under any circumstance, simply do your best and you will avoid self-judgment, self-abuse, and regret. What do you feel? How do you feel about always do your best, Nina?
I don't know. It feels like such a loaded subject to me right now.
Really?
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking about it from this lens of, I don't even know if I have words. Okay, let me try. Sometimes we have a perception of what the best looks like, and we can use it to judge ourselves against, So I'm seeing it from that place where we're like, we're not good enough kind of thing. And there's this version of best out there that we just have a struggle reaching, some version of perfection. And so I'm kind of seeing it from a lens of like kind of trauma responses of like, I need to be perfect to be loved and wanted. And so I think we get to redefine what our best is, right? At all. And it's just what it says. It's like from moment to moment. Like if I'm having a week where, say, I'm not feeling my best, like health wise, my best might look different, but I don't need to use that to shame myself, right? Because this is my best this week and it has nothing to do with anybody else. I get to just decide what that looks like. So there's not a best that exists on a scroll somewhere where we like just open up the scroll and we show you what it looks like and this is the best. It's really like you get to decide what that is. And then you'll know if you're in alignment with doing your best, if you have inner peace around it.
Mhm.
Right? That's what came up for me. What about you?
I hadn't even thought about that. I hadn't even thought like the external expectation of what best looks like, and that maybe we attach ourselves to like that's really about comparison.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Uh-huh.
It's about comparison to my kid does art, and she's a part of this. She was chosen to represent her entire school at this art thing for high school kids. There's like a gallery thing that they're doing this week, and we saw some of the artists come in with their work, and I was like, holy shit, like this is like the best of the best kind of like thing.
Uh-huh.
And at her school, the other kids in the art club and the art classes, they'll go through her, like she says, she'll come into the room and they're like going through her sketchbook, and they're like, we'll never be as good as Gia. Like they're like, oh my goodness, look at what she can do. And then we go to this place and it's like this work is like mind-blowing work, like with all types of medium. It's like amazing. And what was very cool about my kid, because I was like in my heart going, okay, is she going to go, oh, mine isn't as good as theirs? Or like, what happens if? Like, I thought she was going to play that. So I just kind of sit back and wait to see how she's going to respond. And that didn't even occur to her. It didn't even occur to her to compare herself to like somebody else's work. She just started to appreciate what each artist brought. And so like one did this charcoal like illustration of a woman, and I was like blown away when I saw this because it was so detailed and looks so real. And Gia just really appreciated the artistry of it. And even when we drove off, like I was like waiting for her to be like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to be able to like compete with these. And not there wasn't one part of her that was like worried about the best, like who's going to be the best and it won't be me, you know? And so this notion of best, I think, is one of those things that we grow up hearing.
Yeah.
And it starts from the very, very, like when we're very, very little, because parents want their kids to be the best. They want them to be the fastest and the smartest and and then they go to school and then we get like accolades and highlights and certificates for being the smartest and the one who is the fastest and the one so this notion of who is the best is this pretend idea that we've created in our mind. And so you're right. I hadn't even like I know that from a different context, but in this context, I hadn't even considered like how that could feel overwhelming for people.
Yeah. Yeah, because the word best can be a little like activating, right? Especially if like that's what you've been striving for all your life. And maybe you did become the best in something and then like it really didn't change your worth, right?
Yeah, somebody somewhere, I don't know who said this, and I don't even know in what area. I'm thinking it was probably an athlete. I'm thinking it may be like Kobe or something, because my husband watches and plays basketball. So that's been the bulk of my life for, my entire adult life. But somebody said there will always be someone better than you. And that really sat with me. Like, I'm not really interested in competing with people. Like, I'm not really interested in like beating or being better than what I'm interested in doing is honoring myself and showing up in the best way that I can, given my current resources, given my current state of mind, and given where I am physically. Because like right now I've got a knee issue going on, and sometimes my best is I can walk the dog up the street and then come back, and that's all I can do.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that.
Yeah. I think it is an internal job,
Mm-hmm.
right? Deciding what is your best. And when I'm not doing my best in something, I feel like I'm out of alignment, like I'm not at peace, right? And so I think, in order to find out what your best is, you have to go within.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you have to release any expectations of what the best looks like. Because, for example, in school, the best was to make an A, right?
Right.
But then you could back that up and say, well, okay, did I do my best if I studied for 4 hours? Or would it be 24 hours? And then I could believe I did my best, right? Like, so I think if we can drop the programming of needing to get an A and look at like what is my own best right now? And am I giving that?
And can I be okay with that? I think,
Yeah.
as you're talking, how many people don't step forward or move forward because they're so afraid of not being perfect. And I think
Yes.
that's what I'm afraid of for some folks
Mm.
as they're reading this, is like, it's not asking for your perfection. It's asking for your best given this moment.
Yes.
Whatever's happening in your world right now, in your life, your world, whatever's happening, is it your best?
And on top of that, it's coming from somebody who has, I would say, healed a lot of my perfectionism wound. On the other side of it, I can see that in the past, I had this version of perfect that I needed to be, which paralyzed me. So I wouldn't do anything. And then I would feel like I'm not doing my best. Right. But it was because I had this version of perfect that I needed to be. And can you believe that, let's say, you start a podcast and you do it messy because you don't know what you're doing. Can you believe that's your best? Because you're showing up, right?
Right.
And you're getting in the reps and you're gaining a skill. Can you believe on the way to gaining the skill that you're giving your best to it?
Right.
Yeah.
So really, this is about releasing perfectionism.
Yeah.
So can you move to a place of focusing on effort rather than outcome? And that the effort is my best, because sometimes when we focus on the outcome, we will self-sabotage.
Definitely.
Because we're afraid. We're
Yeah.
afraid of our best not being enough.
Yeah, I love that. I have a friend of mine who talks about that. Like she's like, I just want to give my best effort every day
Mm-hmm.
to the things that matter to me. And that can be our best.
You know what I started doing? I started doing this a couple weeks ago, and I don't even know why I started doing it. I really am living in the space right now where spirit says go that way, and I say okay. I'm like, I'm not even questioning it. I'm not even wondering about it. I'm just like, go to that. I'm like, okay, gotcha. So I used to do this. I've gone through different phases in my life, and I used to do this where I go through gratitude at the end of the day. And then sometimes it's mostly gratitude. Sometimes I'll think about, I'll connect with like one of my guides. I'll kind of do a reflection of my day. But what I started doing last couple weeks is I started forgiving myself. So like and I don't know why I'm doing it. It's so weird, but it's like I forgive myself for all of the expectations that I had that I couldn't live up to, or I forgive myself for the things I may have said or didn't say, or the things I may have done or didn't do. And so each day is different. But I start with I forgive myself. And I'm not even sure why I started doing that, but
Interesting.
I got the nudge to just every day release anything that I was holding on to as something that I didn't either accomplish or do or change or make or whatever, or even the things that I said and I shouldn't have said or whatever, that just releasing it all at the end of the day and allowing it to be as it is.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know why. I mean, I know why, like intellectually
Yes.
I get it, but
Yeah.
like literally I was just kind of nudged to do this and I was like, okay, I'll just keep doing this until I know when to stop.
So maybe we end with What are you being nudged to do? And what are you, maybe ignoring? And when can you commit to take the first step toward the nudge instead of away from it?
That's good. All righty, folks. There's part 2 for the 4 agreements. And if you haven't watched part 1, go back and watch that. And we will see you tomorrow.
Yes.
Thursday.
Right.
We'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. Bye.